Welcome to Half Done Hobbyist. Today we're painting Mephiston Lord of Death for the Blood Angels. I'll show you how I went about painting him, and at the end of it I've got a miniature that I'm actually very proud of. So I hope you enjoy. Mephiston has always been one of my favourite characters in the Blood Angels army. I am a big Blood Angels fan, although I've never managed to paint a full army of them because I'm a bit lazy. So I decided to take on the challenge of painting the new Primaris model, and I'm really glad I did. It's absolutely beautiful. It was an absolute joy to paint. So here in the video, I'm just blocking in all the armour with Mephiston Red, quite appropriately. It's a beautiful colour, covers really well, and it just looks fantastic on them. I'll tell you a bit of background about Mephiston. He started off as brother Calistarius, and he was a member of the strike teams that went into the Sin of Damnation Space Hulk from the Space Hulk game, and there's actually a model for him before he turned into Mephiston, which is quite interesting. If you know anything about Blood Angels, you'll know that they suffer from the Black Rage, and once a Blood Angel is taken by the Black Rage, there's no coming back from it, usually. They start seeing visions of Sanguinius dying at Horus's hand, they go mad, and they get inducted into the Death Company. The Death Company are basically, it's their last chance at glory. They get sent to fulfill a specific mission because they're absolute nutters at that point. So when he was fighting in the Second War for Armageddon, he fell to the Black Rage, and then a building fell on him. So he suffered screaming for about 7 days. On the 7th night, he'd battered his way free of the rubble, and he was a new and terrible being called Mephiston. A few orcs thought he was easy meat because he was all raggedy, his armour was all broken, and he killed about 24 of them and then walked back to his own lines, and he had defeated the Black Rage. So what I'm doing now, I'm painting the base, including the feet. I'm painting it with Mechanicus Standard Grey. You can't actually see the base once Mephiston's on it, so I just thought I would paint it in sub-assemblies and then put them together. So the reason I'm painting the base early is because I wanted to put it in a painting handle. So I painted the base, I've painted the underside of Mephiston, under his skirt and everything, and I've stuck them together just so that I can use the painting handle. So I was really happy with how this came out, and I'm actually gutted that you can't see it. So after the Mechanicus Standard Grey, I've washed it with Nuln Oil, and then I've got Dawnstone, and I've used a light dry brush, just building it up. Don't put too much paint in your brush at this point because it will just make it all streaky. Even if you can't see anything in the first few passes, keep at it and it'll turn out brilliantly. So after the Dawnstone, another quick dry brush with Administratum Grey, and then that's it for the grey parts. Leadbelcher for the silver bits, for the metallic bits, and then Stirland Mud for all the mud around it. And then wash the silver bits with Nuln Oil and dry brush the mud with Baneblade Brown and then Tyrant Skull. And I think it came out really nicely. Like I say, I'm sad you can't see any of it because it's a cracking base. So after that, I'm just giving it a wee tidy up. I didn't bother highlighting these pipes because, as I say, you can't see much of it, but it still looks good just with a wee coat of Nuln Oil on it. And then I stick them together just so I can use the painting handle. Magnificent. So I'm going for all the rest of the armour, including the shoulder pads, the arms. There's a wee bit on the back, on his back, where the backpack attaches to him. The backpack should be red as well. I initially started painting the cloak Corvus Black because I really love Corvus Black, but it didn't look quite right. It's when I started highlighting it, it came out more grey than anything. So I just went down the traditional route of Abaddon Black, Dark Reaper, and Thunderhawk Blue, then Fenrisian Grey. So I'm using Corvus Black for the gloves and the gun. I'm using Corvus Black for all of the ropes as well. For the gloves, it makes it look really, really almost like rubber gloves, but I really like the effect. I painted the inner, I suppose it's a skirt, Khorne Red. For the shoulder wings and his wings on his abdomen, I've painted them Corax White, and you'll see why later. I also painted the piping in white as well. All of these areas are going to get contrast washes, so that's why they're white. Just make them as bright as you can. Even although Mephiston has conquered the Black Rage, there's still doubts about him. Some people think that he came back not quite right, but I suppose that's just the standard story whenever anyone comes back from anything like that, like Buffy the Vampire Slayer, that kind of thing. Back to painting. Here I am, putting in all the gold in Retributor Armour. We've got the big skull in the shoulder pad. We've got all the blood drops with a gold surround on them as well. We've got the pommel of the sword. We've got the rims on the shoulder pads. All of these are gold. For the big skull in the shoulder, I did consider doing it as a big proper bone skull, but I didn't think it would look quite right, just because of the way it joins to the rim of the shoulder pad. So it was a considered decision to go with the gold. And I actually really like it now. Mephiston rose through the ranks of the Blood Angels and soon became Chief Librarian. He's one of the most powerful psychers in the entire universe, which is quite cool. If you've watched my Griff Oberwald painting video, you'll know that it all looks a bit messy right up until near the end when it all comes together and looks pretty decent. I'm not blowing my own trumpet, but this is one of the best miniatures that I personally have ever painted, so I'm really delighted with it. And all I did was take my time over it. There's no big secret to it or anything like that. I just apply the same techniques over and over again, take my time, make sure everything's neat and tidy, go back and tidy up after if I've made any mistakes, which I do frequently. There's a lot more to this. I could have made this video about 8 hours long, but I had to cut it down so people would actually watch it. So here we are. All the skulls and crossbones on the model are done in Ushabti Bone to start with. So there's one in the chest, 2 on his shoulders, and 2 on the top of the psychic hood. There's also 1 right in the middle of the backpack. These are all nice wee touches. I used to kind of skimp on washing and highlighting absolutely everything, but since I've started doing that, I've actually been a lot happier with my models. So I'd recommend just doing as much as you can. Just put highlights everywhere. Now, for all these pipes that we painted white, we're now painting them in Iyanden Yellow contrast. I didn't want to mess about with Averland Sunset and Aerial Yellow and things like that, so I just used contrast and I think it looks pretty decent. The pages of the little book are Corax Stone. The book itself is Mephiston Red, and I've done all the detailing on the book in gold. If you catch the edges of the book with a nice highlight, it looks really effective. As usual, you want all your coats to be solid. You don't want any to be wishy-washy where you can see the undercoat through them at all. Make sure everything's as solid as possible. All the metal bits were done with Leadbelcher, and then we'll do the usual Nuln Oil and Stormhost Silver highlights on them. The backpack vents, the back of the gun, the nozzle in the gun, and all the little bits around the vials, all the metal bits at the top and bottom of the syringes, those all need to be metal. So there's not much to it. I'm doing the coils of the gun in Corax White as well, of the plasma pistol. The blade of the sword is Corvus Black. The handle of the sword is Screamer Pink. And like I say, everything's been detailed on the book in gold. These wee bits at the back, you can't really see them very much, but I just did a wee Leadbelcher on them, and later on I coloured them in blue with Aethermatic Blue. So all the syringes, all the blood drops and things like that were blocked in with black, just so you've got a good base to do all your fluids and things on them. A little bit of parchment was Ushabti Bone. There we go. And now we're on to my favourite stage, which is washing. So I'm putting Nuln Oil all over the Khorne Red, all over the Mephiston Red. I'm missing out the gold as much as I can, making definitely sure that I'm not putting it on any of the white bits, and it's also going on the Corvus Black. So all you want is a nice even coat that seeps into the recesses of especially the Khorne Red cloak. So once that wash is dried, get your Khorne Red out and layer right on top of the underskirt. You just want to layer as much as you can and just leave a wee bit of black in the recesses just to make it look a lot darker than the top folds. This was a really fun stage. Just make sure you pick them all because there's tons of them, and it looked a lot better than I thought it would, to be honest. As you know, I am of limited skill, so I was delighted with how these skirts came out. I just used my common sense on where to place these layers, and I think it worked. I've never really used Khorne Red before, but I might start using it in the future. It's a really nice colour for robes. This was me trying Aethermatic Blue on top of all the little nodes. It really worked on top of these coils. There wasn't much required on this at all. Aethermatic Blue and then a wee corner highlight of White Scar worked wonders. All the white bits are painted with the Apothecary White contrast. Skeleton Horde on all the bone areas and also the gold. I decided to try something a bit new. I'm not sure if it worked or not, but it all seemed to come together. So I'm a big fan of contrast actually. I also put Skeleton Horde in the little parchment. Now we're on to highlights. So for the armour, this lovely muscle armour, Evil Sunz Scarlet was the first one, and I just did a little curved shape on the top and down the middle of the abdominals. Same with the chest area. Just make sure you get all the bits, because there's loads of bits hidden around the sides of his abdomen that you need to get. Otherwise it just looks silly. Also all the piping should have been done gold as well. Should have mentioned that. So just put the highlights wherever you think it'll look good. I went for the inside of the pectoral muscles and the inside of the abdomen. Also highlighted the edge of the armour round his neck. I know a word for it, but I don't think I'll pronounce it correctly, so I won't say it. And filled in all the little bits in between the shoulder pads with a little bit of Evil Sunz Scarlet. Edge highlighted all the armour, still with our Evil Sunz Scarlet, and edge highlighted the book. Same again in the other arm. Just got my Evil Sunz Scarlet and edge highlighted away. Tried to catch as many edges as I could. The backpack, there are so many edges to line highlight, so just take your time. Make sure you get them, especially inside the vents and things like that. It's all these little touches that can make a big difference to your finished model. Now, Fire Dragon Bright, same kind of thing, except highlight your highlights, so make them slightly smaller than the previous highlights, and it honestly looks fantastic with very little effort. This armour is just beautiful. I really want to see a full squad with just this armour, maybe Sanguinary Guard, something like that. It'd be interesting. So like I say, just sketch the highlights in just on top of the other highlights, just slightly smaller, and it looks a wee bit gradiated. Now we're actually looking pretty good. It's all coming together pretty quickly. Now for this little bit, I put a wee bit of Fire Dragon Bright on. I wasn't sure this was going to work, and then I got a bit of watered down Evil Sunz Scarlet, painted it over the top, tried to blend it in, and then got Mephiston Red and blended it over the whole thing. And it really, I don't think it was bad. It wasn't terrible. You can't see anything bad on the model. It just looks like a highlight, so I was quite chuffed with that. So the gun, all the Corvus Black bits are Mechanicus Standard Grey and then Dawnstone highlighted. So it looks like I'm doing it a lot faster. This is at 6 times speed because I didn't want this video to be 4 days long. So those highlighting is rubber gloves. Just highlighting the wee ropes with Mechanicus again. For all the bone bits, highlighted with Ushabti and then Screaming Skull. Could have taken it up to Pallid Witch Flesh, but decided to leave it Screaming Skull. I quite liked the creamy effect on it without going too far. Highlighted the pages of the book with Ushabti as well. And got Khorne Yellow and just painted right at the front of these pipes, these yellow pipes. All over. All the back pipes, all the front pipes. And for the underskirt, I couldn't find Wazdaka Red, which is the natural highlight for Khorne Red, so I mixed Khorne Red and Wild Rider Red in a 50-50 mix, and it was actually really effective. I think it blends in really nicely. You can see a few chunky highlights, but it's not too bad, so I would actually recommend going that route. So just highlighted all the folds, didn't even go too far down the folds, just right on top of them with my mix of Khorne Red and Wild Rider Red. Now this is pure Wild Rider now, so just highlight the highlights again. And it looks quite harsh to start with, but it all blends in really nicely when it's dry. So be as careful as you can, and I'm really happy with that result. Now for these wee vials, just some of them should be on an angle, so think about where the liquid would lie and then paint them that way. It's difficult to explain, but I think you'll get what I mean. Don't do them all like straight across the top, do them at an angle. So all the gems down one side, Mephiston Red, and then Fire Dragon Bright is another highlight on them. If you mess up, just get black and paint down the other side of it to try to make it look a bit more glassy. For all the vials, just got white scar and painted a line down them to make it look like a reflection. Now the sword was the bane of my life. I didn't know what to do with it at all. I've never really painted a proper power sword before, so I got Thousand Suns Blue, Ahriman Blue and Temple Guard Blue, and just went back and forward doing thin glazes all over it just to try to make it look a bit ethereal. I think maybe I fluked it, but I'm not too sure how. Get your lightest colour at the end and just do a line highlight all over. Watching this back, I actually wish I might have stopped a little bit earlier, because I think halfway through it was looking good. I put a wee bit of lightning on it, but I'm not a big fan. All I did was get thin white scar and just sketch in a white cracked pattern all over it. Not sure I particularly like it. For the black cloak, like I say, I changed it to Abaddon Black, and I'm using Dark Reaper, Thunderhawk Blue, and then this tiny highlight of Fenrisian Grey just on the very sharp edges. And just took my time and highlighted as much as I could. Get those sharp edges, make them look even sharper. It's all good. For the gold, I highlighted with Sycorax Bronze, and I also put on a few, against my better judgment, I put on a few highlights of Stormhost Silver, just to try to make it pop. I still don't like the effect, but it's on there now, so it's done. Also used Stormhost Silver to highlight all the metal bits on the syringes, all the bits on the plasma pistol, the vents on the backpack. I put little dots on the front of the psychic hood. There's loads of little spikes as well, so just try to catch them with a wee bit of Stormhost Silver. For the parchment, I did a little bit of Mephiston Red, and then tried to put in writing with Black Templar. This was my favourite bit of the entire painting session. This came out really well, and I was so surprised. He's undercoated in Wraithbone, and this is Skeleton Horde on his hair. Just lump it on there. And let it dry. And then this is Guilliman Flesh. I nearly went the whole Bugman's Glow, Cadian Flesh Tone, Kislev Flesh route, but I'm so glad I didn't. The Guilliman Flesh really goes into these recesses and marks them out for you. It looks a bit like Triple H here. There's little metal things in his temples, and I did them Leadbelcher with a little Stormhost Silver highlight. So after the Guilliman Flesh is dried, get Flayed One Flesh and just catch every line on his face. They are so well defined, so try not to paint your Flayed One Flesh into any of the recesses, because it kind of ruins the effect. But just pick out all the raised areas. His nose, his chin, his cheekbones, these wee frown lines on his forehead. And I have to say, it's the best face I've ever done, and it took me about 10 minutes. So you can tell me differently, you can tell me it's rubbish in the comments. I don't care, I'm really happy with it. All these lines are really easy to pick out. Just take your time and just put a layer over the top of them. And then I did Blood Angel's Red in his mouth, because he's a vampire, and he does actually have vampire teeth in there. white scar for his vampire teeth, and I put white scar in his eyeballs as well. So the idea of the white scar in the eyeballs is we're going to use contrast paint again. We're going to use Aethermatic Blue, and it worked. So there he is with just the white scar in his eyes, and there he is with the Aethermatic Blue. For the hair, it's highlighted with Ushabti Bone and then Screaming Skull. I think the hair on the Mephiston box art is a wee bit too yellow, and I think this works slightly better. But I am, of course, biased. Now that's a good face by anyone's standards, I think, and it took me 10 minutes. So that's the end of painting Mephiston. Doesn't look too difficult, does it? If you liked this video, like and subscribe, and if you would like to see more, then I will be back very, very soon. Thank you for watching. Appreciate you all.